Martin, Nottingham Forest, mate. You were
Mm,
there. You
yeah,
were there. You travelled up. It's by all accounts quite a nice ground to go to.
yeah. I think from I go to grounds and I want to absorb the atmosphere and I like the heritage of Forest. I think as a ground that I've been to this year that creates atmosphere, it's created one of the better ones. And a lot of the Forest fans have commented. I did a match day vlog, and a lot of the fans were saying, well, it wasn't anything like it was against Liverpool. And I'm sure it wasn't, but it was still really good. It was freezing cold. It was bit my toes, like I got frostbite on my toes. It was that cold. It was bitter, but it was a real traditional ground. It had the little vibes of the Dow when I used to go down to the Dow as a kid, and that's what I enjoyed about it. And you got to give shout outs to the Forest fans. They're really nice people and they're very welcoming. Out of all the away fans I've been to this season, I would say they're up there with the best. But I really enjoyed it. The away end was good. The Saints fans, you've got to give them a massive shout out, haven't you, Josh? To travel and the numbers they do week in, week out. We've not seen a win away from home. I think I've missed two away games all season, only one of those by choice. But yeah, they're just phenomenal on the road, and they always back the team, always back the team. And we go to Ipswich in a couple of weeks' time. I think that's sold out as well. It's insanely good. And we've won one game all season, but it was a horrible first half, wasn't it? Jeez, it was so bad. You'll want to come on to that in a minute, but yeah, I enjoyed the trip. It was a really, really good away day in terms of going to a traditional, well-supported football club.
Mm. Yeah, we will get on to the dreadful football in a minute, but yeah, just a word on Forest because they're outrageously good, and it's a real breath of fresh air. Because I said at the beginning of the season, our first home game was obviously against Forest, and a lot of people were upset that we didn't at least get a point, and they're like, but the reasoning for it, I heard from a lot of people saying we have to beat the teams that are around us, and I was quite confident then, and I said they won't be around us, they won't be near us. They're a really good side, and I did not think they'd be up where they are, but I never saw them in any danger this season. Brilliant club. George, you must sort of have some sort of interest or history with Nottingham Forest, given your Welsh connections, i.e., your Dean Saunderses of the world, going and playing for Forest, and they've had quite a rise, haven't they, recently? I mean, they've got an
Yeah.
absolutely bonkers owner, but he seems to be his gambles have paid off, haven't they?
Yeah, I think the word you use there, gambles, is kind of what they've had to do to sort of do what they've done, because Southampton have struggled having come up into the Premier League, and you can only spend so much money. Well, Forest broke the rules, really, didn't they? They ended up falling quite foul of things, but they've managed to ride that and still keep signing players. And even though they have broken the rules, so to say, they've actually done a lot of shrewd business as well. Some of the deals they've been able to pull off for the prices they've paid for players like Callum Hudson, Adoy Alanga. They sold Brennan Johnson, to go back to Welsh players you mentioned, for a lot of money, and they've been able to buy 5-6 players, it feels like, for the amount of money they got in for him. They're a club who I think anyone who gets promoted out of the Championship will look at them and want to replicate them, but I'm not too sure anyone's going to be able to replicate what they've done, because they've been brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely superb. So that's enough for the superlatives about Forest. Let's talk about how crap we are then, Martin. That first half, I was talking to George just before you joined us, and I was trying to decide whether that first half was as bad as the Bournemouth first half. I think we kind of think it's kind of even. I mean, nothing's going to top the Spurs, but just how bad were we in that first half?
In terms of first half away games, yeah, it was right up there with Bournemouth, if not worse for me. Some of the defending for the goals was abysmal, really. But he freshened the side up because he seems to be a manager that likes to freshen things up. I think it was understandable that Silamana, the amount of football he's played in the last year under Martin, he was probably going to struggle to play the two games. I did think that going in, whether Silamana would make it. He's sort of come from nowhere, isn't he? He's first name on the team sheet almost. You see Downs come back in, and I was a little bit concerned about that because he looks like a player out of form. Does this manager and the way the manager wants to play football suit him? He had a really, really tough day. But defensively, Bednarek, who's got the armband at the moment, look, I like Bednarek, but I did do it in my post-match reaction. I called him out, but I didn't think he had a very good game. Defensively, him and Harwell Bellis were at 6s and 7s at times. The fullbacks didn't stop crosses coming in. I think the third one was just a great example of that. It just not putting any pressure on the ball, but that was all across midfield. We don't have any leaders in this team. And I think it's a problem with the club, top to bottom. I don't think there's leaders. I think it's people with Premier League experience and know the Premier League that are shrewd enough on the field. Harvard Bellis played for England not that long ago. He looked like a League One player at times in the first half against Forest. And that's maybe a little bit harsh, but I thought he was poor. And the same with Bednarek. They just weren't organised enough. And how Wood gets in between them. He goes off, sits into midfield, plays it out wide, and manages to get between them and win the header. I'm like, it's ridiculous. But the first goal, 2-3 players didn't put any pressure on the ball, and that was Downs and Aribo. They're just, they've just proved time and time again that they're not good enough for this level. Unfortunately, we fall way short. But when you're not good enough, and I've called this out a lot, when you're not good enough technically, you have to give 110%. No matter who you are, you give everything. And if you give 110% and you're organised, you'll give yourself a chance. And for the first 45 minutes of the weekend, we didn't give ourselves a chance because we didn't give enough. The players didn't give enough. They let every single fan that travelled that far down. And a lot of the guys I was with wanted to go home. They were like, if they score a fourth, we're going because we've had enough. And I was like, you just hope we come out and show some spirit in the second half. And we did. We were much better in the second half. We showed a bit of spirit. Ugochukwu made the difference, I thought. Occupies the centre-backs by bringing, 2 big centre-backs, and we're playing Archer. Archer's got no confidence, and he plays against 2 centre-halves. He's just, Murillo's huge. So play Unuachu. Let Unuachu, get amongst them. But yeah, second half substitutes were good. And I thought the first half was right up there with Bournemouth, mate.
Yeah, not a height you want to be hitting, or a low you want to be hitting, I should say. Yeah, good summary there. I don't want to be too critical of specific players, but I would argue that's one of the worst halves of football I've ever seen Flynn Downs play for us. He was shocking. It was like it's almost like he didn't know what his specific plan was. I didn't know whether he was man marking, zonal marking, or he was just trying to hit everything that came near him, or it just seemed like he was an absolute headless chicken at points. George, why is that, do you think, since Juric has come in? Because he seems to have been, not that he was setting the world alight before he came in, but since Juric has come in, and it could just be my opinion, but it seems that Flynn Downs has sort of lost his way a little bit. I don't really know what Flynn Downs is doing. Although when before he was crucial. If Downs wasn't in the side, you knew he wasn't in there. Now it's you missed the crust, that the destroyer. But is that it? Is he just there to just hit people? Because again, I think he could have easily been sent off as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it perhaps is a combination of the fact he's been injured. He played that Boxing Day game against West Ham, Ivan Juric is first in the dugout, and he'd already had a bit of an injury problem before that, and it worsened. Then he missed a couple of games, and some other players have come in, and perhaps the other players who've come in fit the system a bit better than him. Flynn Downs is probably the player in the squad that you can point to as being a Russell Martin player. Flynn Downs' best parts of his career, except for that time at West Ham where he obviously won a European title, but he wasn't really someone who factored into their squad massively. All of what Flynn Downs has done to be the player that we all think he is has come under Russell Martin. And then you take that manager away. Is he necessarily someone who fits Ivan Juric's system? I don't know. Ivan Juric was quite happy to point out that Flynn hasn't been good since he's come back from injury. He still thinks he can be a Premier League player, but he did say the Championship is very different to the Premier League. And I think the biggest issue for Flynn is he's 1 game away from another 2-game ban for accumulating yellow cards. He does seem to get caught out in midfield, people getting past him, and he's has to foul them. He made 4 fouls in the first half against Nottingham Forest, and as you rightly pointed out, probably should have been sent off for that one on, I think it was Morgan Gibbs-White, right in front of the Saints fans down in the corner. I think, you could say that perhaps he's lost his head a little bit, but I think that's probably fair to say about a lot of the players in the squad, because they're down the bottom of the Premier League table with 6 points. I don't think anyone's in a great headspace, but you'd hope that players can then transfer it onto the pitch a bit better. And, he's lucky to have not been sent off, and he probably will get a ban sometime soon because he has been getting that many yellow cards that you'd expect him to get that 10th one.
Yeah, you absolutely would. You absolutely would. And it wouldn't, if he plays on Saturday, I wouldn't write off of him getting booked again on Saturday. It's just what he does. He's an absolute banker, if you're a better man. Martin, I don't want to sit on first half too much. We know how poor it was. We know every single goal was frankly pathetic to concede. I mean, from the schoolboy standing off of both of them, both Hudson-Odoi and Elliot Anderson, as they're bearing down on your penalty area. Not one person stepping up, not one person putting a body. From, I think the first one was I can't remember. I think it was Bree, or it might have been the second one. Bree played a terrible ball to
the second one, into Bednarek,
right.
yeah.
The first one was just like everybody stood off him. It was like they wanted Anderson to run with it and thinking, oh yeah, go on then, shoot. And it's like, well, there you go, there's your answer. He did, and he scored. Like, it was pathetic. And the third one almost was the cherry on the cake, a free header for Chris Wood. That is the most ludicrous thing you can offer. Yet the second half was completely different, and it almost felt like the game changed for me when Ugachukwu came on, because it's almost like the Forest midfielders almost had something to compete against. Then they were a little bit like, Gibbs White wasn't quite. I mean, he's an absolute demon at the best of times anyway. He'll drive at anyone, but like, they were kind of a bit more wary of the fact that this big guy was in there, and he wasn't losing his mind. He wasn't chasing shadows. He was like keeping cool. That was kind of, for me, the biggest sub. What do you think he possibly could have said at half time to get that reaction? Or do you think it is literally just the fact that Ugachukwu and the other guys who came on, Onuachu and Sulemana, sort of took the game on the back by themselves?
You would have loved to have been in the dressing room, that's for sure. It would have been an interesting team talk, that's for sure. Look, Ugachukwu is brilliant. I think he suits his manager down to the ground, and he's getting a real tune out of him. But he's like vital to the way he wants to play football. And without him, there isn't another Leslie Ugachukwu at the football club. And Downs is just, he's not that sort of player, is he? He's not that athletic player that can get to box to box and agile and able to make big tackles. Like you were saying a minute ago, he gets ran past a lot, and he has to foul. I think it was maybe George said, has to make these fouls at times. He's clumsy at times. Look, he got go back to Downs. He got let go by West Ham for a reason. If he was good enough, he would have stayed there. No doubt about that. But Ugachukwu is vital to how Ivan Juric wants to play. And when he's fit, as long as they can keep him, I pray to God we keep him in this window. He doesn't get called back by Chelsea, because he's a really important cog. And I could talk about occupying the two centre backs, and you needed Paul to do that, and he immediately did it. They were fearful of him the minute he came on the pitch, and all the fans were as well, because everybody that I've spoken to since, like, God, the big fella's decent when he come on. They don't know anything about him. Everyone's like, he's a handful, isn't he? I was like, but I think, like Juric said in his presser today, it was all about getting him up to speed, getting him really fit, because I think he's a really important cog. I know he has a good game, and he had a couple of shockers. But it's something about him. You need that physicality, and there's no one else at the football club that can play like Leslie can and like Paul can. I really like Cameron Archer, but as a player that's going to score constantly week in, week out in a side that's struggling at the bottom of the table, he's just not going to. He's 22 years old. It was way too much to ask of him. Who in the world at that football club thought that he was going to be the answer to score a load of goals in the Premier League? For a side that we're going to have, it's going to be hard to create chances and hard to get opportunities against top sides. We'll probably come on to recruitment, but boy, they fall way short up front. There's just nowhere near enough to hurt teams. And that second half, Paul, Ugachukwu, I think Sulemana injected a bit, but it was all about those two for me. James Bree in the side's an interesting one. I'm still not convinced by him fitting in that side. He's a weak link for me. Gives the ball way too easy. Gets caught out of possession a lot. That's just me and as an amateur fan watching it, but that's just some of my thoughts.
Yeah, good point. Isn't it funny how we're now talking about people like Leslie Ugachukwu and Paul Onuachu being absolutely crucial? Football's a funny game. George, I've got two questions, because I do want your opinion on what Martin just said. Not so much on Breezy as a person, but sort of who he's come in for in Wood. The first one, You mentioned Archer as well. I also really like Cam Archer. I think he's probably the most natural finisher in the squad. He's shown that on a few occasions this season where he's had that striker's instinct to take a ball in a turn and just absolutely try and break the net, and no one else really does that. So he's definitely a fantastic finisher, but he's not got that presence. What is there an Ivan Juric system that you've seen him play so far which could incorporate both big man and Cameron Archer? And do you think there is even a situation this season that Cameron Archer that situation is engineered where he will play up front with someone?
I think if that's what they need to do, if that's what Ivan Juric wants to do, he will try and find a way to do it. He's not someone who's going to have this idea in his head, we're going to play this way. We can only play with this sort of duo of forwards up front. If he needs to play Cameron Archer in a game, he will create a plan that he thinks will fit Cameron Archer. But I don't necessarily see they haven't really used one that would fit Cameron Archer and Paul Onuachu. I don't think we've even seen them on the pitch with each other so far. I think when you have Campbell Dean, who's of a similar sort of physical profile, small like Cameron Archer is, he obviously drops deep and uses his pace and ability to drive at players, and that's not necessarily Cameron Archer's as game either. He likes to almost run onto balls over the top, and if you've got Onuachu up front, you're not really going to be clipping those balls in behind because you don't want Onuachu to chase on. I think it was in those couple of games where Onuachu sort of dropped off a little bit. There was a few times where Tyler Diblin and maybe Sugawara were playing balls for Onuachu, and that's not his game either. So I'd be interested to see if they can find a way around to do it. And just going back to James Bree, in some ways, I'm not surprised he's in the team because when I went back and looked at systems Ivan Juric has played before, he quite likes a quote unquote right back or left back playing in defence. And I think Nathan Wood's very unlucky to have dropped out because he came from out of nowhere this season, really, didn't he? He wasn't playing any minutes, then got his chance. And although Southampton kept losing when he was in the team, he looked quite good. £3 million looks like a bargain signing. So I'm a little bit surprised to see he's come out of the side. I wonder if he will come back in at some point because we've seen James Bree obviously play at right back and then he's brought him into centre back and he's probably not at his best in that position. I don't know why Ivan Juric sort of hasn't played Nathan Wood. He's brought him on in a couple of games, but I think perhaps sticking him back on the left, you may then get more out of Howard Bellis and Bednarek and shift them around a bit better so they're in more of a sort of the way you want them to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because you talk about those systems and it's in previous Juric teams, he likes to play a fullback at centre back or whatnot. If you was to say now or before Juric came in, if you used to say, oh, he's going to play a back three, he's going to play a bank three centre halves, but one of them is he likes him to be a player who can play fullback as well. There's only one name that would have popped into my head is, oh, who can play fullback and centre back? And competently, it's Charlie Taylor's the only player we have in the squad who has done that, who plays that centre back, left back.
Well, James Bree has done it as well, to be fair. But
I mean, like he's got. I feel like Charlie Taylor's done it at a higher level because he did it in the Premier League for Burnley, and like he was more complete in that sense. Whereas obviously James Bree has had a bit of a longer path to get to the Premier League, and this is kind of his real first whack at it because he came into an absolute sinking ship last time, and the manager who brought him in was sacked after 8 games. So it's like this is his first whack at this level, whereas Charlie Taylor's done it at this level in that hybrid position, yet he's heading out the door. I'm not suggesting that he should be playing ahead of Bree. I'm not on the training ground. I'm not qualified to make these decisions. I don't see what Charlie Taylor does week in, week out, but it's puzzled me a little bit. And like you say, I do think Nathan Wood's quite unfortunate not to have lost his place because I thought he's really good when he came in. I don't want to add too much more into it, but Martin, how important can that goal be? I mean, I'll mention Bednarek quickly because that if I was him, I would have been claiming I meant that all day, every day. I would not have let anybody tell me that I didn't mean to flick it over the keeper with like a back heel. But he's already admitted, no, I didn't mean it, which is outrageous. I wouldn't have let anybody know that I didn't mean it. But Onuachu, how important could that goal be for his confidence? And how high did he get, by the way? Because he jumped and he's 6'8". He must have got up to like 8 or 9 feet to head that ridiculous header.
Yeah, it was a good header. I'm pleased for him. I'm really pleased for him, and I think all the fans are as well. That he's not been treated particularly well since he joined this football club. Mismanaged. I've never seen a player mismanaged quite as bad as Paul actually, to be quite honest. But look, he's got something about him. It's brilliant to get a goal. I think he build on it, and I do think if they don't go and sell him, which they could do, they tried to sell him every single transfer window since he was signed. So will he be here come the end of January? I think he probably will be, to be honest. But I think he will get more goals. I questioned a few weeks ago, will he ever score for Southampton? And he dedicated his goal to the fans, which I thought was really good. They've given him a lot of love since he's been here. And look, he's a different kind of player. He's not really a Southampton player when you look at it at times. But I hope he can go on and get some goals for Ivan between now and the end of the season. And I think he'll move on at the end of the season. There's no doubt about that. I think he will go, and just hopefully he could help get a few goals, get us a win or two that can get us above that 11 points that we ideally want to get above.
It's crazy that we're talking about getting above 11 points. It's actually disgraceful, but that's where we are.